Yes, the concept is from dirt to plate, wild edible plants. And so we're searching to make a killer salad later on. And John Kalis joins us now, and he is an esteemed author, and he has welcomed us into his home, into his garden. So take us through the first steps. What do we want to have in our gardens? What should we look for in the wild?
Well, those are two different things.
Right.
In your garden, it's great to use your weeds.
Okay.
Because about 50% of the weeds you have in your garden are edible and delicious. It's just a matter of knowing what they are.
What to eat and what not to eat. Now,
right.
Tell us kind of what you have in your garden here. This is very interesting.
Well, let's start with the poisonous plant first.
This is maybe what you don't want to eat if you don't know what you're doing, correct?
All right, so this is pokeweed, and this started in Asia, came over as an ornamental.
Okay.
But it is an esteemed, if I may use that word again, esteemed edible once the younger plant is cooked.
Okay.
So it needs about 10 minutes boiling, then it's perfectly edible, and they have pokeweed festivals out east, and I mean, people eat this by the tons.
But if you didn't know that, you would not want to grab it, take a bite.
That is correct. You always need to know what you're doing. Don't just like grab things randomly. It's not good.
Not good. Okay, take us on through the garden. Show us what else we can eat.
Well, so
and
here's dandelions, and these are one of the most misunderstood plants, and the reason is because what happens is that people go to their yard, which is filled with grass.
Sure.
And it's dry out, and they grab the first dandelion they see, they pick it, they put it in their mouth, they gag, and they say, I'm never eating another wild food again.
Right.
Well, what they don't know is that there is the appropriate time to pick it in the appropriate conditions. So right now, these dandelions are in great shape because they've been well watered, and they're growing rapidly, and that's the key. Rapid growth is the key to edibility with dandelions.
Now, what is a wild food, if you can define it for us?
Okay, so edible wild plants are wild plants that have one or more parts that can be used if gathered at the appropriate stage of growth and properly prepared. Lots of nuance there.
Right.
Right? So each of those things is important. If you don't know all those three things, you know, the parts, the processing required, and the edibility of each part. If you don't know those things, then you don't know enough about the plant.
And you told me that it's just a really cool connection with nature when you really have your diet full of these wild edible plants.
Yeah, well, everybody used to eat wild foods.
Right.
I mean, before there were supermarkets, everybody ate wild foods. In fact, all wild foods are traditional foods that we've lost connection with. So a lot of the edible weeds that we have out here, these are really European traditional foods that were brought over with the influx of the Europeans. And the native plants out here are native traditional foods. So everything that is edible was a traditional food at some point. So there's no random, is this edible kind of thing? No,
Right.
We know the things that are edible. And only in really, you know, poorly written survival manuals do they tell you to do experiments to whether something's edible or not. This is not good advice.
One thing that's popping in my mind as I look at your beautiful blueberries back here, a lot of people will see a berry and they want to eat it, but how do we know, are there any telltale signs if it's poisonous or not?
A book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no way to look at a plant, because any plant that produces a berry, any color can be poisonous. You can't tell by the color. You can't tell by the look in general. Okay, you've got to know the plant.
You've got to know the plant. Well, can we stick around and will you take us inside your kitchen a little later in the show? We're going to make some salad. I know we're going to make some soup with everything that we find that is wild, edible, and delicious.
And more.
And more. Okay.